Did you always want to be a mom?
You know what? I never really thought about it.
Yeah.
No, not until I was much older. That was never like a thing for me. And it's not, not that I didn't want to be or wanted to be, but I just never, it was never like a thought.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the same. But now, like, I never thought about any of those things, really. I never necessarily thought about getting married and didn't necessarily think about wanting to be a mom or envisioned myself as a mom. I just sort of thought it would organically happen, which it did, but it wasn't as though, some women are like, oh, all I wanted to be was a mom. I didn't have those feelings.
Yeah, I didn't either. I didn't have those either. I wanted to be something else. Like professionally, I was focused on like becoming something else. Family was never my focus.
Yeah. I think once I got married, it started becoming my focus. Yeah. But initially, no, it wasn't. Yeah. But I did say that if I did become a mom, I always wanted to have, I wanted to have, I think it was 3 children. I don't know where that number got stuck in my head, probably because I'm an only child. So I wanted to compensate for all those times where I felt like I didn't have a friend to live with me.
Right. That's an odd number though, 3. But
I don't know why 3 sort of stuck with me, but I always wanted to have 3 children. And I always saw myself as just balancing everything. I thought I was going to have the kid here in one hand or the kids like right here. And then I would be sort of working and
cooking with the other one.
Yeah. With my foot, cooking with my foot. Yeah. Like just sort of juggling everything. So I realized that now it's not like that, but I don't know. I've been thinking about this concept of motherhood lately. So I was watching this YouTube show. I don't know if it was a show, but it was like a documentary of some sort. And it was basically about non-custodial mothers. So mothers who chose not to have custody of their kids anymore. And all of the moms said that they never really thought about being a mom. They didn't mind it, but they just never really thought about it. But then the other thing was that they were really young when they ended up having kids. And they also never felt like they were in the right relationship. Like something felt wrong. Mm-hmm. Anyway, all of these factors ended up leading to them choosing to leave their kids with the father. It made me just think about how, so these women also talked about the reason why they ended up having kids was just they felt like a lot of pressure from society to, as a woman, sort of be a mom. And it made me start to think about how much pressure there is on women just in general to be moms. And sometimes we think that if we don't necessarily have that yearning, that initial yearning to be a mom, that something is wrong with us, when that actually may not be the case. But that once we actually do become mothers, there's this other societal pressure to be this perfect mom. And my daughter gave me a picture the other day that she was like coloring some picture in at school, and she brought it home, and it was a mom with these 2 kids. And I remember looking at the picture, and it was this mom who was like she wasn't in sweats. She was actually in the complete opposite. She was like in this gown, this beautiful dress. Clearly they were in the house, and the kids were impeccably dressed as well. And the kids were giving their mom a gift. So it was a boy and a girl, and they each had a gift for their mom. And the mom was like, ah. And I looked at that image and I was just like, that's so much pressure, because motherhood is not like that. And so I just think about the women who feel like there's not a connection to motherhood. But then I also think about the moms who are mothers and there's no connection to that idea that society has to be this perfect mom. And it just made me start to think about my own definition of what motherhood is. So that's why that kind of question came about. Like, did you always want to be a mom? Did you just sort of find yourself in this situation? Was it just a natural progressive step after you got married?
Yeah. So let me ask you, how would you describe motherhood given, I guess, your own experience? Because clearly you don't agree with that picture.
No. It was like everything was so perfect in that picture. Everything was so perfect. Her hair was perfect. Her clothes were perfect. I was like, oh my God, there's not a stain on her.
Not a string of hair out of place.
Not a string of hair out of place. She was wearing like heels in the house.
I love it. I love all of it.
I think I would describe it as, I have a few words to describe it. So the first one is vulnerable. I thought about this the other day, and I was watching my daughter swim, and she was trying so hard to make it across the lane. Right. And I wanted her to make it so much. And I just, like, I was watching her and she was so determined, and it made me love her even more, but it also it also made me want to protect her even more. And I thought about it, like the thought crossed my mind. I was like, how is it possible to love someone so much? And it makes me feel very vulnerable. So motherhood just in general, I think, is just a vulnerable experience that I had never experienced prior to motherhood. But at the same time, I would sort of describe it as an experience that strengthens someone. And then I would also describe it as scary. Yeah. But then brave. I just feel like motherhood is just a bunch of contradictory feelings. Yeah. You know, it's scary because you don't know how the world is going to respond to your child. There's so many unknowns. You don't know what the future holds for your child. You don't know what person they're going to be. But at the same time, it brings out this bravery in you, especially when they're young, right? My child is young. And so I think about all the things that I was scared of as a child, and even sometimes as an adult. And it's like, when you have a child, you just have to be brave. Right? Because you don't want to plant that seed of doubt in them. And so, I don't know, things such as needles, right? Like even getting a vaccine, a shot, a blood test, you know, those are things that I hate. I don't like them, you know, but when I take her to the doctor and she has to do these things, I sort of have to put on a brave face and try to encourage her to be brave. And so I just think it's it's like a juxtaposition. It's just a walking contradiction, motherhood.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think you're totally right. It's a lot of it. If I feel like it has a lot of layers, right? I think mothering to me has a lot of layers. And personally, to me, I think it's like a blindfold journey. You know, you just don't know what's coming next. You know, you just have to be ready for whatever's throwing your way and just find a way to conquer it, because that's just what you do. But then again, it's humbling, right? It's completely transformational, and it kicks your ass like nothing else. But then it's like, you know, it just hands it to you and like, here, this is what you thought, but it's not really, it's not it. And then you have to find a way to figure that out, because, you know, like every child is different. It's so many things. But I think what I love the most about it, I think to me, motherhood is, you know, it's one of my best hats. You know what I mean? This is where I get to completely be myself and just be my authentic self altogether, and just be able to step outside of me just for someone else's need. And I think that's so powerful. Just put me to the side, because it's really not about me anymore.
Yeah.
So
are there things, because you just said it challenges you, right? And it hands you your ass.
Yeah.
It pushes you outside of your comfort zone. Are there things that you discovered about yourself by being a mother, like you didn't even know existed, but motherhood brought it out in you?
Yeah, I think so many things, I think, right? I think one of the things that probably stuck out the most is just my ability to just accept someone for just who they are. You know what I mean? With like all the flaws, any like just how just completely just the way you are, not nitpicking at anything. It's just like,
yeah, that's hard.
Who I am. It's so right. It's exactly because, you know, I'm like, oh, I like you like just a regular person. You're like, oh, I like this about this person, but then I don't know how she does this. Oh, I can't understand, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But with motherhood, you just have to love what you have.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
it depends on how you grew up, right? Because for us, I think motherhood was more of a correction, right? Like our mothers probably not intentionally, but they corrected more. Whereas I feel like our generation is more, like you said, accepting.
More accepting. Yeah, absolutely. I was corrected all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. It's like, no, that's not it. No, you don't do this. Don't do that. That's
close your legs.
Yeah. Right. That's
sit with your legs crossed.
Right.
You can't go out with your hair like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't speak like that. You can't act like that. You can't like all of that. Like, you're being too fresh. Don't answer back. Like, it's like,
stop asking me why.
Right. So there's so many like, don't do this, don't do that. And with, you know, and with my kids, obviously you got to teach them right from wrong, but I feel like I just allow them to just be who they are and just embrace it. And you just have to love it. And I don't want to not love it. You know what I mean? I don't want to suppress that. I don't want to make them feel like, no, you have to fix something about you because that's not right.
Right. Yeah.
That's how you are.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel the same way. And I find myself catching myself and being more mindful of my words. And I think that one of the things motherhood has forced me to do is, I think, connected to what you were saying, not be so critical and rigid and understand that life is unpredictable and I don't have control over everything. And that was like a big learning curve for me. I knew it, but I had always still fought that and tried to control everything. And, you know, controlling tangible objects is one thing, but trying to control a person is completely different. And I think there's a different dynamic between, you know, when you first are with someone and you are married, there is an element that sometimes you want to change about the other person, or you yourself try to change just to become a unit. But with children, it's completely different.
Yeah.
I'm just very, I think, kind of to what you were saying, I let go a lot more. And that wasn't always a characteristic that I had. I was always the one who was like white knuckling it, clenched fists, you know? And my daughter is just, she's not having any of that. She does not take me seriously, and not in a bad way. She's not rude or anything, but you know, when she sees that I'm stressed, sometimes I'm like, shit, you're the adult here. You know, I just feel as though her perspective on things is just so whimsical and innocent and how life should be lived. Right.
Right. Do you feel challenged by her?
Every day. From negotiating to having knowledge, you know, so the negotiation I'm okay with, but sometimes the questions that she asks, I'm like, shit, I don't even know the answer to that question. Let me Google it. Let's Google it together, you know? So I'm challenged in that way. I'm challenged in having to be in the moment, right? Because she's still so young. It has forced me, because she's still so young and there's still that basic need to be loved immediately, and there's not that patience that's been built up yet. I have often been forced to just stop what I'm doing in the middle of me doing something and focus on her. And that was a challenge for me at first. And I'm okay with it, but it also makes me, so every time she wants attention from me, it makes me question, okay, is what I'm doing in this moment more important than her?
Right.
And it never is.
Yeah.
And so it helps me prioritize.
Got it. what would you say it's, I guess, if you had any, I'm sure you do, your mommy superpower. Do you have one?
Yeah, my mommy superpower is having fun and laughing.
Oh, I didn't think you were going to say that.
That is my mommy's superpower. I can always make her laugh no matter how upset she is. That is my mommy superpower. And I love it. It is such an awesome superpower to have.
That's awesome. I did not think you were going to say that.
What did you think I was going to say?
I don't know, but not that. I don't know what I thought you were going to say, to be honest.
My ability to have my child speak proper English.
What? No.
I don't know what you thought I was going to say, but yeah, I love it. I think part of that comes from, I love my mom, but she was raised very differently than I was. And she's so sweet and so nurturing. But sometimes I think that I wanted her to just let go a little bit, let loose a little. Mm. And I can be like that at times. But when it comes to my daughter, oh my gosh, it's so fun. So I always try to give her the idea that, okay, dad's not the only fun person here. Yeah. Right. Because traditionally speaking, that's how it works. Dads let the kids do everything and moms are like, nah. So, I bought a scooter. Like, we just do a lot of stuff together. That's fun. And so I think that's my superpower.
Yeah, I do remember seeing your grown-up scooter.
Me on a scooter, really?
It's like a grown-up scooter, y'all. It's pretty cute.
It is. Don't sleep on the scooters. Those shits are fun.
That's awesome.
What is your superpower?
My superpower.
Your mommy's superpower.
Mommy's superpower. It's very similar to yours. I get to see all the silly side of them. Everything. Yeah. Especially with my son. I think he's very silly, but I've noticed that with me, he completely lets his guard down. I see all the silliness, like the dancing, like all of it. Aww. And I don't think everyone has experienced that yet. Mm. And I love that because I feel like even though I am being a parent, I can also see them sort of looking at me like a friend, you know what I mean? That you kind of sort of like let in and let your guards down and see all the silliness that you can do. So I have been able to experience that and I love it. Yeah. I absolutely love it. Go ahead.
I was, again, watching YouTube. You know why I watch YouTube so much? YouTube is portable. Oh. Like so it's like if I'm at the pool and I'm waiting, or if I'm at a tennis lesson, I can just open up my phone and watch YouTube. Yeah. So anyway, I'm saying that because there was this TED Talk and it was, I forgot the woman's name, but she was talking about the definition of a good mother. And she was saying the definition of a good mother really is about the quality of connection. Yeah. And that's what I'm hearing you say when you describe that experience, like when you describe those hidden moments where your son is really funny and you guys are just in the moment and you get to joke and you get to laugh. And what it sounds like you're doing is building or strengthening that connection that you have. Right. And you're not the mother. You may not be the friend. I don't know, but you're like that connection. You're still the umbilical cord.
All right, I'm just like, bounce back. I mean, I don't know what I am at that moment, to be honest with you, but I just know that it feels great to be there. Yeah. And just to see all sides of it's easier with my daughter to be that silly, right? With him, it takes a lot more, but just being able to witness that, I was like, oh wow. Like, and you can tell when people walk in, he turns it off. Yeah. So I know, like, cute. Right. It's the best. And I know it, like, And I mean, I don't put him on the spot about it because I don't want it obviously to, make it go away or anything like that, or have him be so conscious about it. But I just love it. I don't know what I am in that moment, but I just love to be there. And I just try to write it out as much as I can. But I think it's a cool thing. I think it's, it makes my heart smile. And that's all that really matters at that moment. So
yeah. And imagine how that's making him feel too.
Right. Yeah. So I hope, it's one of those things that I just kind of hope that carries on, kind of stays alive. But, he's getting older, so we'll see what happens. But like you said, if the connection is strong and it's there, it may just carry on.
Yeah. And you're probably setting him up for making really solid connections with other people too, right? Because if he feels like he can be vulnerable with someone, yes, albeit his mom, but it probably gives him the confidence that he can be vulnerable and he can be trusting with other people in the world too that he comes in contact with.
Right. Yeah. So let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
I know. Listen, this mother thing is not easy. It is not easy. It's not easy. And it's funny because now I think we're both in a space where we are beginning to discover, get to know more of the actual human beings. Like we're seeing our children as separate beings.
Yeah.
Right. Like individuals. And it wasn't like that in the beginning. I have a friend who just recently had a baby and I check on her, much like you did when I had my child, because you had already had your two children. Yeah. And so you were just remembering what it was like and you always checked on me. I'm trying to pay it forward. So I always check on her because I know that those first 3 months are just very jarring. It's a roller coaster and you're sleep deprived on top of that.
Right.
So now when I'm talking with her and she's asking me about certain things like sleeping patterns and things like that, what I said to her the other day was, you're in it right now. You're very much in it. And at some point you will no longer be in it because your child is going to grow up. And when you look back on this time that you're currently in, you're going to see how small it is in comparison to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And when your child gets older, he or she will not be thinking about how mom left me in the crib to sleep alone at night, right? Like they're not going to be, but when you're in it, it feels that way. Like you're so afraid when you first have a child about all the things that you're going to mess up on. Right. And it was like, the goal for me was like, I don't want my child to be mad at me, to hate me, to have any issues because of me. Right. And your mind just goes there when you are a new mother, understandably so. And as you are a young mom, like I remember distinctly that sort of that push and that pull. And now I don't have it anymore. Right. So like that pulling where your child needs you so much, they need to be fed, they need to be held, they need to sleep, they need all these things, all these biological things. And you want to be able to provide it, and you have to provide it because they're relying on you. They are one of we are the only species where we're born and we have to rely on an adult, right? All other species know how to do mostly everything by the time they're born. And they need.
Yeah.
And you as a human being are trying to come to terms with how you are changing and also be everything to this one little human being. And there's that sort of moment where there's a conflict. There's this inner conflict in you. And it's like, I want to be there for you, but I also need to sleep. I also need to like go to the bathroom and not hold my pee in forever. I also need to eat. I also need to get my body back. Like you have your own needs. And I remember that phase very well. And that phase was very, what's the word for it? That's the phase that sort of handed me my ass. Not this phase right now. This phase I think is beautiful because it's like you said, you're building connection.
Yeah.
You're getting to know who they are as human beings. You are finding out their little quirks and their nuances.
Yeah.
Back then, oh my God.
That was your ass on a platter.
That was, I don't even know what that was. And that's probably why most women probably like block that part from their memory. Because now if someone was to go back, like was to ask me about every single day, I couldn't recall. I just recall sort of milestones back then. And it wasn't even that long ago. My daughter's 5, so it wasn't even that long ago. But like there's certain things I remember. Like I do remember the wee hours of the morning where it felt like the world was asleep, like maybe 2, 3 a.m. watching CNN in the darkness while I was trying to breastfeed. Like I remember those moments. And I just wanted that connection that we have now with our kids. That's what I wanted back then, but like that wasn't happening.
That wasn't happening then. Those were some tough times. The earlier days, that was that was like literally like motherhood, just put your butt on a platter and handed it to you. Like
you're like, no, this isn't
motherhood. You thought you had it.
This is not motherhood. Where's that picture with the mom and her 2 children in her house dress and heels? Yeah.
Exactly. And you know what the messed up part is like there's no manual. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's no manual that anyone can give you. Like, here, read this and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
None of it.
Yeah. But at the same time, right, there is no manual, but people do try to give you advice. And sometimes that can either help or that can make you feel even worse. And I do remember a lot of times, the professionals in the industry, not everyone, some of them were very encouraging, but some of them really made me feel like I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. Yeah. Like immediately when you leave the hospital, they give you that chart and you're supposed to document how often your baby poops and pees and, make sure they do it this time of, oh my goodness. At least that's what I had gotten. Right. And, I remember for the first few weeks, I was like, okay, she pooped 5 times. Oh no, she only pooped 4 on this day. And I remember my mother-in-law saying like, it's not so scripted. It's not how it works. Yeah. But, I wanted to make sure that I was the best mother that I could be, and not realizing that being the best mother that I could be was just sort of following my own instinct and not a chart. So there is no manual, getting back to your point, but sometimes you feel like there is a manual and you're the only one who hasn't read it. Right? Because everyone's telling you what to do.
Yeah.
And I think that was the other thing that I learned. Like my situation, it helped me stay in my lane. Now that I'm more experienced, I realize more so how different every household and every family is. And now I've come to terms with that. Like, this is what's good for me and my family. People would always say that, but there'd always be that comparison.
Yeah, you can't compare.
No, but I think that, with time, you compare less.
Yeah, you definitely will compare less with time. But it's funny. I always tell my kids, even to this day, I'm like, I may not be the best parent, but I am the best parent for you.
Right.
And outside of these walls, you will find nothing close to me. So it's you guys in me. Like you take me or leave me. Like it's not, it doesn't get any better than me. Trust me. They just look at me like,
for you.
Yeah, for you. For you, it's me, no one else. So if you think there's someone else out there, good luck. And they just look at me like, what? They're like, you're crazy. Okay. I'm like, no, wait, we're not trying to go anywhere. So it's like, we just have to like write this out together. And, it's funny, like, as they get older, I think I told you this before. We have like a night where it's kind of like a safe night, a safe space. I forget it's like a circle of trust. Mm-hmm. And where we kind of sit around and I literally just asked them, it's like, all right, so how did the week go, or how did this month go, whatever. Now we prolonging it because they're getting older. So I give them a lot more space where they, go through things and experience things and then have actually something to talk about. And I just ask him, I was like, look, I tell him, look, motherhood is all parenthood altogether is new to us, right? And as your mom, I really want you to tell me how you think this is going. You know what I mean? Like, is there something that I'm doing too much of or less of or whatever it is? I was like, tell me, because if you're feeling a certain way and I don't know about it and I'm not catching it, then it's only going to get worse from here on. But if you tell me, I was like, hey, mom, I wish you could have done this better, or do a little bit more of that, or a little less of this. Like, that would be so helpful. I was like, this is all new to me. It's all new to me. So you helping me out would only benefit us, because to me, it's a partnership. Like, I'm not here to dictate and tell you how you need to feel or any of that stuff. My job is to keep you safe, guide you, and kind of give you the best practice for, for your future. Mm-hmm. So with you kind of like chiming in, I don't take it as a disrespect. I completely don't. If anything, I think it's a productive thing to do, because then I'm like, hey, you know what? Let me reassess how I'm doing this. Maybe you're right. And they're very different kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what may be working for one could maybe isn't working for the other. So I gave him the opportunity to kind of like rate me. I was like, hey, let me know. What do you think? Like, how is this going? And for the most part, it's pretty good. Like, there are a few things they'll say, like, I don't know, kind of, fall back on with your rules with, like, obviously the whole technology talk. But I was like, all right, sure. But you know what I mean? It's nothing like drastic that, that at least so far.
Yeah.
But they're still young, and there's, there's one soon to be a teen, but I feel like, the few years ahead of us, I think there's going to be a lot more to talk about and address. Mm-hmm. But like, at least for now, there has been a foundation where you can feel like they can just sort of like just come back to me and be like, hey, can we talk about XYZ? And I guess that's what I'm hoping for, right? To have them just circle back and say, remember the talk that we used to have? Like, can you do less of this or more of that? I need this, or whatever it is. So to me, I think, I don't know, I'm looking forward to that stage of motherhood for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like to me that you're just reinforcing that connection.
Yeah.
Where you have a time where they can get anything off their chest. They can be completely honest without consequences.
Right.
And I don't think that is being super liberal. I think that is being forward thinking, right? Because if you react in a positive, constructive, supportive way to small things, then I think in their mind, they will have confidence that you will react the same way for bigger issues.
Bigger issues, right.
And it was funny because yesterday my daughter came home and said her dad nearly lost his mind. And she said to me first, and then I was like, tell your dad. She said, Mom, I have a boyfriend. And I was like, right. Yeah, I know. So that's how I was on the inside. And on the outside, I was like, oh, that's great.
Go tell your daddy.
What's his name? I was like, what's his name? And she told me his name. And I was like, oh, how old is he? I said, oh, that's wonderful. And she goes, yeah, it's my first boyfriend.
Oh.
And I said, yeah, that's really exciting. And I just had that smile on my face, right? Because I don't want her to look back and be like, oh, I must have done something wrong because my mom looks angry that I have a boyfriend, or she seems shocked, or she seems disappointed. I want her to remember that I was happy for her. And so, but then on the inside, I'm like, fuck, already? And so but then I was just like, at the same time, I was like, oh, I've had time to process it now that this was on the way home from school. So like, I've had some time to process it. We've had a conversation and I'm like, I can't wait for us to get home and for her to tell her dad and see what his reaction is going to be. So I didn't say anything when we got home. And then we're at the dinner table, we're eating last night. And I'm like, oh, Lo, why don't you tell your dad about your new friend? And then she goes, yeah, Dad, I have a boyfriend. And my husband just like passed out on the floor. Like really dramatic type, and I was like, isn't that so? After he like went through that whole dramatic routine, I was like, isn't that great? Isn't that great? And she goes, why is Dad on the floor? And I'm like, oh, he's just being silly. But to your point, I was trying to sort of set the stage in that, okay, so you're telling us something new, you're telling us something different. And I know that she is watching us, nonverbal behaviors and all, figure out how we're going to react to what she's saying.
Yeah, no, it starts small.
It starts small.
It starts early and small.
It starts small. I think about even when I was younger and like, I definitely should have been a lot more forthcoming with half the things that I did.
Yeah.
But I did not, just because my parents felt strict to me. I knew that they loved me. I knew that they loved me unconditionally, but I also felt like some of the choices that I made might have disappointed them. So I wasn't always as forthcoming as I hope my daughter will be with me.
I guess hopefully she'll break. I guess it's a way of breaking the cycle, right?
It is. I mean, that's what I do. I channel my childhood and figure out what I would have liked
your parents to do.
My parents to do.
Yeah.
But they didn't know better. So I don't expect them to do better. Now I know better, or I know different. Right. And so I'm trying to enhance it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm trying to break the cycle, because I think it was a pretty good cycle. I'm just trying to enhance it. Like there were things that I felt I was stifled in, or, just traditional things as far as what it means to be a woman. And there are molds that I want to challenge with my daughter.
And do you think that, I guess she will, she's still very young, so that's not really.
What were you going to ask me?
I was going to say, do you think if she's going to, take it well, but then she's too little for that.
Take what well?
I guess the way you approach to it, but she's too little. So
I'll give you an example. So she'll say things like, when I get married, and I'll say to her, if you choose to get married, I don't want her to think that there is an expectation. Obviously, there's an expectation for her to be an independent, productive citizen, but there is not, aside from that, and someone who controls their own happiness. But aside from that, there is not any other expectation that I have of her except those things. So I don't expect her to be married. I don't expect her to fall in love with a guy. I don't know. I don't know what she's going to end up. I don't know who she's going to end up choosing. That's okay with me. I don't know if she'll stay in the United States. I don't, there's so many unknowns. So I really just try not to project my idea of her on her.
Well, I see what you mean. You kind of sort of leaving it as an open, I guess, kind of like an open canvas, right?
Yeah. I mean, she already has a sense of self, and I think that for me, it was completely different. For me, it was, I think you're good at this, so I think you should pursue this. I think that, we didn't have these opportunities, so you should totally take full advantage of these opportunities.
Right.
Those sorts of things. I'm not throwing caution to the wind, but at the same time, I'm just going to listen more. That's what I'm just trying to do. Just listen more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not be so corrective.
Well, No, that's definitely a good approach. And, I try to do something very similar with my daughter. I mean, she's what, 9? And I feel like obviously she's coming to terms with the person that she is, or what she's at least at this point, right? Like what she likes and enjoys. And I try to embrace these changes the best that like, I mean, sometimes, I mean, like I said, I have to come outside of myself to just let them become. And I've done that in so many ways with her approach to like chopping off all of her hair.
I knew you were going to say that.
That, I think
that still is in your mind.
That is still in my mind. And that is I think as a parent, that is one of my biggest, what would I call it? I mean, I guess I can say, I don't know if it's a challenge, but
I think you should go a little bit into the story, because some folks might not have heard our earlier episodes when you told that story. And I don't know if you ever really told it in its entirety, but maybe give us some insight.
All right. So, yeah,
it was huge.
That's a good idea. So I have a 9-year-old daughter who, for the longest time, has been asking me to cut her hair off, like short, like a boy cut. And this happened like maybe 2 years ago.
Like Tiffany Haddish, Sanaa Lathan type.
Yeah, like that short. And she's been asking for at least 2 years, right? So, and in that period, I said to her, initially when she asked, I said to her, I was like, "Are you sure?" And she's like, yeah, I really like short haircuts. I was like, all right. I was like, but I understand that. I was like, you're very young. I was like, I would do it for you now, but I just want you to understand how, it works. Like if you decide to change your mind tomorrow, I can't help you. Like it doesn't grow that fast.
Isn't that the worst? Because you don't want to deter them, right? But at the same time, you want to caution them because you're just not sure if they still have that abstract understanding of time.
Right. And she was what? 6 and change. She wasn't even a 7-year-old yet. So I was like, so I want you to understand that it takes a while for hair to grow. So if tomorrow and a month or 2 months or 3 or 6 months, it's not going to go back to the length that it was. And then she's like, all right, sure. And I mean, you know how she is. She's very like, assertive. And she's like, and sometimes she could be very like dry. She's like, yeah, I know. Like, I know what I'm talking about. Like just like that. Like, but so, months goes by and she keeps bringing it up again. I was like, yeah, I am trying to find a hairstylist that can do a really good cut. But this is literally all about me. It wasn't about, it was me buying time to work through myself to be able to deliver on that. Right. Because I wasn't sure if I was ready for that either. So, fast forward 2 years later, she kept bringing it up. She's like, I really like short haircuts. At this point, she's like, what, 9? And so one day I just had to come to terms with myself. And I was like, why? She was like, why am I really doing this? Right. This is a journey that I chose to embark on. And I decided to be a parent, and she can't be me and I can't be her. Right. I just need her to become who she's going to become. So at that point I was like, all right, sure, let's do this. And she was like, yeah, I'm ready. Like, I understand that it's not going to grow tomorrow or in a month or in 2 and 3 or 4 months, whatever. And I really just want my hair to be short. And I was like, all right. So I found a stylist, a hairstylist, and I booked the appointment and we went. So, while we're there, she's like, all right, so, she's like, you should take a look at this because like, this is the last time that you're going to see my hair long. You guys, she's 9. Okay. She is 9 years old. So we go, and, this whole time, mind you, we went. So I told my husband, I was like, we're going to the appointment and we're just going to go get a haircut for KK, come back, and nothing big. So we get there, we chopped off her hair. Like,
so wait,
short.
Can you take us back for 1 second? So she's in the chair,
yeah,
and the hairstylist, like, does the hairstylist have some scissors, and the hairstylist is like, okay, here, like, is he asking, how high up the hair shaft to go?
So we had a picture. So he already knew.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had a picture. Yeah. Okay. So we had a picture. So he sat down with her and he was kind of, trying to get a pulse, because he was like, apparently in the past that he's done this and the kid was completely traumatized.
Miserable after. Yeah.
Yeah. And it turns out that it was like the mother's wish, not the child, and child got out of the chair. So it was kind of like one of those things.
You suck. You ruined me. I'm never going to forget this day.
Right. So he's like, I'm not trying to go there again. So even before we were able to get the appointment, I had to literally explain to him, like, what she was all about, like her personality, what she was, the kid that she was. So he's like, all right, fine. I feel it. I feel what you're saying. She's like, he was like, come in. So we're there. He saw the cut. So he's looking at her, like talking to her, trying to get a pulse and see where she was at. And again, she was like, yeah, like, I just like short haircuts and I'm ready to cut my hair off. And he's like, all right. Like, he wasn't like, he couldn't even fight it. Like, she was just ready. So we did it. So she's like, take a picture, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is the last time, whatever. So in that moment, I was like, I felt like I grew as a parent. I'm sitting there watching. I really like in the chair watching. And she was like, so like relaxed and just like unbothered by it. And here I am, I'm sitting there. Literally, there's like a tear growing. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, she really just sat through this like a grown person at 9, saying, this is what I like. I don't care what the world says. I don't care how I was like, and through the process, I was like, people will mistaken you for a boy. They will make comments about you having a boy cut. She's like, I know.
Yeah.
I know. And she was so
powerful.
Yeah. And she was so ready for it. And I'm sitting there watching her crying. I'm crying. She's fine.
You were crying?
I mean, I wasn't like sobbing, but I was like, I got teary eyed. There was like one tear like rolling down slowly. And I was like, oh my God, like, I felt like I grew as a parent. I was like, if I can do this with this child at 9, I feel like I could do a lot more in any point in time, because that was such a like powerful moment, because at that age, to be so confident about what you want and not care about what the world thinks of you, it literally like sealed everything about what I've been doing as a parent, because I've always said to her, especially, forget about the noise outside, forget about the voices outside of your own, because if it's not constructive, it's not welcome. You know what I mean? Like, I always, enforce that. You just living your truth in your moment, in your skin, whatever makes you comfortable. And she was able to literally, like, she lived insisted, it. Right? Yeah. She lived it, and she insisted that I embraced it, even though I always preached it. I wasn't like, I felt like for 2 years, I couldn't do it. Like, I would preach it to her, but I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So for her to like insist in all of this, I felt like I arrived really, like, she made me arrive at this point where I was like, wow, like, I felt like I grew as a parent, because
she sort of held a mirror up to you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. She's like, this is what you've been telling me this whole time. Why can't you do this? Yeah. Right. So I just had to do it. I had to do it. It was like a moment that I couldn't walk away from. It was a lesson. It was a lesson that I had to deliver, because or else I felt like I would have lost her going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think as moms sometimes, or not, I think even outside of moms, just as human beings in general, I think sometimes we think the guidance that we have been giving is going to show up or come back to us in a certain package.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. It doesn't always do that. And from what I'm hearing, you had spent so much time investing and pouring into her and sort of teaching her and guiding her about the world that she was going to encounter.
Right.
And you were equipping her this whole time.
Right.
And when your feet were sort of to the fire and it was just like, okay, here's the moment of truth, you probably thought that you were going to be tested when it came to like her choosing a college or
Right.
like her, I don't know, think of anything, but it sounds like you had no idea, like you were totally blindsided by the actual situation in which your words were going to be tested.
Yeah. No, you're right. You are completely 100% right. I had no idea it would come back to me in that manner. You know what I mean? Like in that way.
Right. You weren't prepared for that one.
I wasn't ready. No, I was like, wait, you're only 9. Like, I'm not supposed to be doing this right now. Like, wait till you're like 16 or something.
Like, I thought this inner voice thing was going to happen like with friendships or when you were going to the prom or like trying to make a decision about sex. Not here.
Not here. Not right now. Not at 9. Like, not right now. So I was not ready for that. But again, going back to what I said to you in the beginning, I think parenthood for me is really stepping outside of myself to let them become. And so we come home and, her dad was upset about it. And that was a whole other deal. But, again, I had to kind of tell him, I was like, this wasn't about you. This journey is not about you. Not right now, not this. I was like, this was a lesson that had to be delivered because I feel like if I hadn't done it, I was going to miss an important point. Like I was going to miss the lesson that
you totally would have seemed like a hypocrite.
Yeah, I would have failed. It would have been, I would have failed. And knowing my child, the person that she is, she would have caught me.
Yeah. You would have caught me. You would have been exposed.
Yeah, I would have been exposed. I would have been like butt naked on a platter. This is what you've been preaching. Like, hello, deliver.
Yeah, you would have lost your credibility. You would have lost your street cred.
Yeah. I completely would have. So, and that was another thing that we had to sort of like go through. But I was like, it's not about you and I. It's about her, and it's about her being comfortable in the skin that I've always told her that she needs to be comfortable in. And if that calls for a shortcut, we're doing a shortcut.
Yeah.
Because it's just hair. It's going to grow. Like she has a lifetime to grow it and cut it again.
And cut it again. It's only hair. And this is her path, and I think about, as you were talking, I was also thinking about the differences between our relationship with our moms and our relationship with our girls. And, you and I are living our lives right now. Like this is the life that we have chosen. And our children are going to be on a different path. They are going to live the life that they have chosen. And their life is going to consist of their decisions and their choices. And this was a decision that she made.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about you. And it wasn't about all the things that you thought about you when you were her age.
Right.
Exactly. She is a separate person. And I feel like that sometimes in the past, like with the previous generation, that wasn't always the distinction. I think the previous generation, and again, a very broad paintbrush, but I think the previous generation was always trying to sort of fix their, I don't want to say mistakes, but correct their choices through their children. Whereas I feel like our generation is more, or trying to be more accepting of our children, even at a very young age as individuals. And I think that, in other countries, in my experience in other countries, this is not the case. I think a lot of times in America, we sort of impose upon our children a lot more, where I feel like in other countries, not all, but in some other countries, there's a lot more freedom and a lot more free will given to children. But that's what that's making me think of, right? Like this was a decision that she was making and you had to step back and not try to pollute her mind with what you think the world would perceive her as. And she was, you know what I mean? Like she had an idea and she was like ready. She was so ready to deal with it because of you though, right? Because of you, you equipped her, you told her to think for herself. You know, be in your own skin, be confident, be comfortable, stay in your lane, do you, don't worry about what the outside world is saying. And she did it.
She did. Yeah. And I had to let
You're
go
like,
of
damn.
I was like, yeah, you're not supposed to do this so early. But I had to let go of me to let her do that.
Right. Because we didn't do it early. But this is a different generation and they are doing things a lot earlier than we were.
Yeah. Oh, hell no. My mother would be like, what? Please.
Right. Yeah. No, my parents would have been like, no, keep your hair long. Keep your hair long. You know how many girls would love to have long hair? Keep your hair long.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Oh, my God. My grandma now still, like, to this day, drills on me about my natural curly look.
Oh, my goodness. When I first cut my hair, when I first had my big chop, my family didn't even know what to do with me.
Yeah.
It was like they were trying to be complimentary, but I could see right through them. And it was like, oh,
that kind of looks different today.
So are you sure about this? Right. And they would say things like, oh, it brings out your face. Like they just
like what?
Yeah, they just didn't know what to say.
It brings out your face.
They just didn't know what to say. How much do you think of you is in this equation? And not just with this particular scenario, but as just as far as raising kids, how much do you think is you and how much do you think is your child as an individual?
Ooh, that's an intense question. I think as parents, I think we cover the majority. Meaning
up until a certain age, or you just think sort of for life?
I think the initial stages, I think we set the ground. I think we, again, when they're born, they're just a blank slate. They just don't know anything, right? Yeah. So what you kind of like put into it is what they're working with. It's kind of like what brings out the person that, I know they're going to be who they're going to be, right? I get it. But I feel like our guidance sort of like helps mold the individual that's coming out of them in a way.
Yeah, I would agree with the latter part. Like initially when you said you think that we sort of have the majority, I was questioning that because I just don't know with my daughter. I really don't know. I think that I really don't know.
You just think that's who she is.
Yeah, like there are times where I'm just kind of like, I don't know where you got that from. Like that has to be you because it didn't come from me. It didn't come from your dad. I don't know who it came from. Like there are times where I just feel like she just has her own North Star. And maybe everyone feels that way about their kid to some extent. We're so different. There are similarities, but we're so different in some sense. Like I think that there are things such as, okay, when you come home from school and like you have to do your homework, like there are certain routines, but everything else, I don't know. I think she
watches you guys
herself. I think she's raising herself.
Super baby. I think she watches you when you're when you're least. I think she watches your every move, your every say, your every breath is being watched by her.
You know what? And it's probably easier for friends and family members to see what she has taken from both me and my husband and vice versa. Like the same thing with your kids. It's probably easier for me to see what habits and what sort of characteristics they've taken on from you. And so, but now that you said that, I'm like, oh, okay. Some of the comments that she's made. Yes. I haven't explicitly said that, but it might be something I would say.
Yeah. If it sounds like a Marisa answer, it's a Marisa answer. She got it from you when you were not watching because they listen. They totally listen.
They do. So tell me this. So I only have one child. You have two. So how does that work? Because I am in the process of trying to have another child. And when I sort of reflect on how vulnerable and how raw this feeling is of love for my one child, I can't imagine having my heart split in two. So how does that work with having more than one child? Like, how do you split the love? Is there one day where you love one child more than the other? How does that even, how does that work? I have no idea. Right. I'm an only child who has an only child. So I don't have a point of reference.
That's hilarious. So the secret is not to tell one you love them more than the other.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
No. But no, it's doable. I think I love them equally. And it feels like this is what you're supposed to say. But I really do, because because you love different things about them. They're not the same. You know what I mean? They're not the same individuals. They're very, very different. So you love them equally in their own ways. So I feel like I don't compare them, and the love is not the same, but the strength of the love is the same. You know what I mean? Like, you love them for exactly the person that they are.
I guess it's like having parents.
With the same intensity. Yeah, it's kind of like, I go to my mom for this because she's great at that, but then I'll go to my dad because he's great at this.
Yeah.
So, but it's equally like the same strength instead, when it comes to loving them. So that's what I do.
All right.
The heart is big enough. The heart is big enough to handle it. It
must be, because back in the day, people had like 8, 9 kids.
Yeah.
There's plenty of love to go around. The heart is very big. It just expands.
Gets bigger and bigger.
Gets bigger and bigger.
But yeah, I mean, they're all very different. I feel like you just focus on the 1 or 2 things that you love the most that the other doesn't have, and you focus on that and you just keep it rolling. I don't know.
Yeah.
With 9, that's what I'm saying, because I only have 2, so I love all of it. But
you're like, it's easy to just double my heart.
With 9, I don't know. With 9, I feel like with 9, somebody's falling through the cracks.
Yeah. I know.
You're forgetting a name, a birthday, or something.
Do you have any regrets about motherhood?
That's an intense question.
You want me to go first? Let me go first.
Yeah, go first.
Okay. So I think my one regret, and it's a continuous regret.
Oh, it's still going.
It's still going.
Right.
About motherhood is, and sometimes I still feel like I'm in that mode of what's next? Like, what do I have to prepare them for next? And feeling not overwhelmed, that's not the right word, but always like trying to be one step ahead. Like, my biggest regret is just not being in the moment. And I think motherhood always makes you feel like you have to be taking care of something. And I want to experience more of the mothering part and not so much I want to experience more of the connection feeling part and not so much the task part of motherhood. Like, that's like one of my biggest regrets, that leading up to motherhood, and I think even the earlier parts of motherhood, and still right now, I always feel like I'm thinking about the next day and not always. There are times where I am in the moment, but I'm not in the moment as consistently as I would like to be with motherhood. Because I feel like, now my daughter's only 5. And I'm sure if I was to talk to a parent of a 14-year-old, of a 20-year-old, they would tell me to be more in the moment, and that the things that are happening right now, although they feel very important, are probably minimal in the grand scheme of things. So if that's I don't know if that sounds like a regret, but that's one thing that I wish that I could sort of become better at as a mom, is just being more in the moment and not always thinking about, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do this, we got to do that. I have to make sure that we're prepared for this. And, like sometimes it's just too much. It's just too much.
Yeah. I was going to say, I agree with what you think those parents would say to you. I think that's exactly what they would have said to you. Be in the moment, like let go of.
But are you in the moment? Are you in the moment when, because your kids are a little bit older. So do you find yourself in the moment, or do you still find yourself always going into the future?
I always go into the future. I always go.
Okay, great. So it's not going to stop.
No, I don't know. I feel like if I don't go into the future, I feel like I'm falling short and I'm not prepping them. But then again, I battle, like very much so like yourself. I battle with that too. It's kind of like, no, Ellie, just take a step back. Like, and be a kid for a day or two. It's like, it doesn't need to always be so like, I love structure. I function with structure. If I don't have structure, I nothing happens in my brain and it bothers me. So I feel like I'm always doing that with them. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I'm always finding a lesson in something. You know what I mean? Like,
kids, gather around now that the day is done. What's the lesson?
Always finding a lesson. And I feel like it could be intense sometimes. And I try to step back. I'm more aware of that, because they're like, oh yes, we know if we don't do this, we're not going to be a productive member of society. We're not going to have jobs. We know. It's like, they're like, yes. So I battle with that. And it's normal. I don't know why we do it. And I don't know. I really don't know. But I feel like if I don't do it,
right,
you're going to fall short.
Right. Or that someone else will teach them some lessons that you don't, like, no, that's not not what's up.
Right. Like if I have all these quotes that I like write for them, especially my son, because he's older. So I write it. And, one of them is like, this, shortcut takes you nowhere real fast. And I like, and then at the bottom, he's like, quote,
fast.
Right. At the bottom, he wrote like, quote by mom. So it's like in his room, like in the closet, like on the wall. But those are the things that, again, like it's happened a few times. I've noticed him taking shortcuts, and I use those moments to like as lessons to drill it in his head. Like, you are going nowhere fast if you do this way. Like, real fast. Like, you're gonna be stuck in all senses. Like,
you'll be on the turbo setting, like nowhere.
Right. Like,
you're going nowhere fast.
Right. So, and in my head, I'm like, professionally, like personal, like everything. Like when you go find a job, like I'm like, why is my brain going there?
There's so many places we can apply this to. Yeah.
Right. So I do that all the time, girl. I guess I do. Yeah, I do that all the time. And but I sometimes feel I need to. I feel like I need to do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel bad about it.
Yeah.
And then I go back and I sit back down with him and I kind of just tell him, I was like, this is where my brain goes when these things happen. And I think that's one of the things that I love about my style of parenting. And I'm not saying it's great. I'm not saying it's the best. It's just my way and it works for me. And I find myself when I find the need to like reprehend them about anything, if they get in trouble or whatever, I find myself talking to them about anything that is out of the ordinary or they've done. I tell them about it. And sometimes it's, depending on what it's about, I may or may not get a tear or two, but at the end of it, I walk away, right, for like 5-10 minutes. And then I come back and I hold them and I hug them. And I say to them, no matter what it is that you do, I will always love you. I'm always going to be here. But it's my job to tell you and teach you the right way. If I don't do it, I failed to you as a parent. But what I'm not going to fail at is showing you my love. And I hugged them, and that's the end of it. I was like, we're always going to end this on a good note.
Yeah.
And the good note to me is you knowing that I will love you regardless of the choices that you end up doing. And that's the one thing that I don't want them to lose focus on and not be confident that we'll always be there. And that to me is key. And I do that all the time. No matter if I will yell at you till cows come home, but I will be there with a hug. It may, I don't know. I've shared this with some other parents, and they're like, "What?
Really?
Right?" But
they don't get it.
I mean, they're like, I don't do that. I get it. So it's like, shoot, we don't wear the same size shoes, so I get it. It may not fit you.
Yes.
So
no judgment.
Right, no judgment here, but it works for me because I feel like I need them to understand that what the choices that you made today for this particular incident was not the best. Right. This is why I'm yelling at you about it. But, my love for you will always be there.
Yeah.
And that's that.
And you choose better.
Yeah. And just, it's that simple. So I always ended with that. And that I don't know. It works. It works for me.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, what's the one lesson that you stress as a mom that you would hope your daughter will remember for a lifetime?
I'm probably not going to be saying it as eloquently as I want her to remember it. But just think for yourself. It's hard because when you're young, you're easily influenced by the outside world. And I just want her to listen to her inner voice. Like, that is the one lesson that I stress. That, and that things are in her control. So instead of saying things like, have a good day, I'll say, make it a good day. Or her dad always says to her, you can do anything that you put your mind to. But if I really had to just hone in on one lesson that I would want to make sure she took away from me being her mom, is just to listen to your gut and think for yourself. I don't feel like it'll ever steer you wrong. When I think about the times in my life when I didn't listen to my gut, and I didn't listen to myself. And I
ended up in a pile of shit.
Yeah, you ended up in a pile of shit. And
that's where I ended up.
Right. No, you end up in a pile of shit. And the same person who gave you the advice is now winning because they gave you the advice that was fit for them and not for you. So they're like, what? It's fine.
No, it's my advice. You weren't supposed to follow that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the one. That's the one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's an important one.
Yeah. What about you?
I would say be a kind leader.
Oh,
be a very kind leader.
That's important.
Yeah, I want them to lead, but I also want them to be aware of their, of their surrounding. Yeah. Be empathetic. I think.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what I was hearing from you. Also be empathetic.
Be empathetic for sure. Yeah, I think I would say that to them. I hope that sticks.
I'm reading this book that's called How to Raise Entrepreneurial Kids. And that's one of the qualities that they say works in tandem with other ones, just to qualities of a good entrepreneur. And not that the kids maybe necessarily want to go down that path, but empathy is one of the leading characteristics.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I have to work on my empathy a little bit more.
I think you're good at that.
I can work on it a little bit more. I think that's the other thing. I try to, what's that word? Elevate in my daughter some of those qualities that I think that I'm lacking. And not that I want her to be a better version of me, but I obviously want her to be the best version of herself, but I want her to learn from my failures. And so sometimes I also think about like, what's the best way to communicate? You know, like when you feel like, what's that saying? Smart people learn from their mistakes. Wise people learn from the mistakes of others.
Yeah.
And so I always try to, she was already born with that empathetic gene. So I don't really have to tell her to be empathetic, but that is something that I'm glad that I see that quality in her. Because if it wasn't in her, I'd be like, you should, let's work on your empathy a little.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it took me a while to get there.
So she's gotten you beat.
She's already had me beat. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it sounds like all of our kids have us beat already. They already have one leg up. They already have an advantage over us.
Absolutely.
I guess that's the way it's supposed to be.
I was about to say that's how it should be.
Yeah.
Do better than your parents, or bigger and better, or whatever. There's a saying, but I can't think of it. There's always a saying for everything.
There is. But I think it's, you know, as challenging, as raw, as vulnerable, as sad, as joyful, as, I mean, you can just sort of use any word to fill in the blank about motherhood. And so all those words and more, I wouldn't take it back, because it introduced me to a new version of myself that I didn't even know existed. And maybe it did all along and it was just dormant from life. Mm-hmm. But regardless, it's been released. That part of me has been released. So it can't go back on the bottle. And so it introduced me to a new chapter and a new version of myself that I really like.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's pretty powerful. That's really powerful.
And it took a while to get there. It wasn't instantaneous. It was not instantaneous at all.
It never is.
No.
It takes time, and you have to grow into it. And like you said, it's a part of you that you probably didn't know existed. So coming to terms with that person, you know, like, oh, shoot, that's you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just patient. I'm more patient. Right. I don't, you know, there's so many endearing qualities that sort of rose to the surface in me that I didn't even know was there before I had my daughter. I think I was always hoping that it was there, but I wasn't put to the test. So there was no reason to really bring it out, but she did. And I'm grateful. And she has brought out I was going to say she's brought out the best version of me.
Yeah.
Or up to this point, the best version of me up to this point. It can only get better.
I'm going to ask you when she becomes a teenager.
I know. But I feel like I have insight into what I'm dealing with as she becomes a teenager, just because of like my past career with adolescents. Right. However, I hear that it's always very different when it's your own child. So
yeah, your approach is definitely different because you're in it.
Yeah, because
you're in the sauce. You're cooking it up.
Yes. And it's funny because I see sometimes people being more patient with my child than I am.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine. Yeah. I probably had like tons of patience for other people's children, but then absolutely none for my own.
Yeah, the standards for yours is it's way higher. So you're like, oh, you don't get to fail at this shit.
Right.
You don't get to do this.
So going to the guidance counselor. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Don't you just love motherhood?
I love it. I would not take it back. I would not take it back. So
I agree with you. I mean, it has its challenges. It's definitely not as easy, and it's not what anyone ever expects it to be. But I think at the end of the day, it's very rewarding. To me, at least to me, I think it's very rewarding. And I think if there's anything in my life that I can maybe speak to, and I think one of my greatest legacy is being a mom. I think I've done thus far. I'm pretty content with what I've done with my kids, and I hope it continues because I really enjoy the journey that I chose, because, like I said, I chose to be a parent, and I really enjoy every bit of it. As challenging, as crazy as it may be, it's something that I chose, and I'm gonna give it my all. I believe in, if you choose something, you gotta give it your all. I put myself in this situation, so I have to give it my all. So I don't know. I'll take it all the shit show, all the headache. Give it like it's.
Yeah, I think when you have time to step back and look at it from the outside, I think you realize the impact that you're making and just how you've evolved, but when you're in it, it's really hard.
It's hard, yeah.
So I think the older my child gets, the more time I have to sit back and sort of reflect and then be grateful for the experience.
Yeah.
But when you're new to the game,
yeah, I know. It's hard to see.
It's hard to see. So to all our mothers out there, if you just started on this journey, it will get better. It will get better.
It will.
It will. If you're struggling, if you got it, then keep doing you. Keep doing what you need to do. Stay on your path. But, for those that are sort of scared, confused, vulnerable, and you just don't know what to expect, it will get better. It will get better.
Yeah. I mean, those are all valid feelings. Yeah. I still have them, sure. I feel all of that.
Yeah.
I feel like I have it, but I still have it. All the feelings. But I just, I tackle it every day. Every day it's a new day, and every day you do the best at it.
Yeah, it probably never stops.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's like, no, until they off to their homes with their families, and
I don't know if it even stops then.
Even then, you may get a phone call or two, like, "Hey, mom," but it doesn't end. You're right, it doesn't end.
Yeah. Every day.
Every day. But no, to me it's enjoyable.
It is. It's fun.
To me, I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. I think there's just something that is, I love what it does for my spirit. I love what it does for my soul. And I just know, I feel myself becoming a better person.
Yeah.
With every incident.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because you're shaping up a little life.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're shaping up someone else's life. So
yeah.
It's a great feeling.
I know. Our kids are gonna be like, oh my goodness, you guys are too hard on us. But whatever.
Yeah. It's part of the plan.
It is. They'll look back and they'll do the same with their kids.
I know. Yeah. It's funny. I say that to them sometimes. It's like, when you have your own child, you know what I'm talking about.
I know. I can't wait.
Do exactly the same thing.
I can't wait to be a grandparent.
Oh, hell no. I can wait. What are you talking about? Stop it.
Because then I feel like with grandparents, all they do is spoil their kids. They don't care as much.
They don't. They break all the rules.
They do.
All the rules. So it sounds like you're going to be a grandparent that's
oh my God.
Those rules.
Yes, completely. All the time. All the time.
Ice cream for dinner? Sure. Grammy said so.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, my dear.
Yes, it's been fun as always.
It has been a good episode.
Good talk.
Definitely good talk. Put a lot of smile to the heart.
We did. Well, until the next time.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Deuces!
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Lifing It. Please visit us on Instagram at Lifing It Podcast for links to earlier episodes, or check us out on YouTube at Lifing It Podcast.